Election Day 2020. We have arrived. I'm going to give you a lay of the land, what to know, why it matters, when to start paying attention, plus a few answers to some of your key questions that will hopefully get us through the next 24 hours. We'll see. But here's what you need to know on Election Day. 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock on the East Coast is when polls start opening. Midnight Central Time is when the final poll closes in Alaska. There's a lot of variation in between, so if you are voting on Election Day, you really have to check your local area to know when polls actually open and when they will close. When do you have to start paying attention for potential results? 6 o'clock Central Time, we're going to start to see polls start closing on the East Coast, and around 8 o'clock Central Time is when many of the big battleground states will close their polls. We might have some results by then, but if anything, this is when the momentum starts to accelerate towards a picture emerging of what the 2020 election really looks like. So 8 o'clock Central Time is a good time to be aware of. If you're placing a takeout order, do so before then. Emily, you had a great question. How are mail-in ballots verified? How are voters verified? It really depends state to state. In some states, they require identification, even a public notary. In other states, they're just matching signature verification. When you hear mail-in voting, just know that oftentimes it's including absentee ballots as well. That's when someone is voting out of state, but they get to vote in their state of residency. So it includes both. Mail-in voting in America was expanding prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but the pandemic plus the political will has expanded some of these programs, and that's where the controversy starts to emerge in some states. In the state of Pennsylvania, there was a really important recent court ruling that is allowing mail-in ballots to be counted up to 3 days after the election. That ruling can potentially be challenged. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about some controversy about mail-in ballots and mail-in voting for this particular election, something to keep an eye on. Emily, number 2, Emily Hodge, she had a question about how can a president lose a popular vote but win the election? And a question about the Electoral College as well. So this is a great question. A U.S. president is not chosen by popular vote, as you know. The U.S. president is chosen by the Electoral College, and electoral votes are assigned depending on the popular vote in the state. So whoever wins the majority vote in the state usually collects the electoral votes from that state. An elector that's appointed by one of the major political parties will cast that vote for the state. But that doesn't happen on Election Day. So we vote on Election Day or prior to Election Day. Electors will vote in a couple weeks. And what has to happen is that the states have to actually verify or certify the results. In the state of Michigan, for example, in 2016, the state was called for President Trump, but the election results were not certified until 3 weeks after the election, so it can take some time. But here's the timeline. Electors will cast their electoral vote mid-December. The results of the Electoral College will officially go to Congress. Congress will more or less approve of the Electoral College results, and then the inauguration will happen in late January. Congress has that joint session first week of January. The inauguration happens in late January. So that's the timeline we're looking at. Great question from Memory Cells. That was the Instagram handle. I feel like I'm losing mine, so I felt good about that handle. And a great question as well about unrest and preparation for unrest in America, what that's all about. What's really important to know is that there's a lot of headlines about potential unrest on Election Day or election night or after the election, but we do not have specific details as to what particular unrest is being talked about. You have big companies like CVS, Tiffany's, the jewelry store chain, making preparations in areas where there's been looting or rioting already in 2020. And they're doing that just in case. So big headline, light on specifics right now at this very moment of recording this video as to the details of what the threat is. Uncertainty is stressful, isn't it? And we've certainly experienced a lot of it in 2020. And just a note on that, I was reading a little bit about the Civil War because mail-in ballots in America started in the Civil War soldiers. And here we're thinking we're really confronting a lot of uncertainty, and we are. But imagine what it was like in America during the Civil War as well. Uncertainty has been something that has surfaced repeatedly in the American political system. And so that, in that perspective, what we're experiencing now is different and new and unique for our times, but uncertainty in general is something that Americans have had to confront really always back to our founding. That perspective helped me a little bit during this time because uncertainty can be definitely a little bit stressful. The story at this point can go any number of directions. So as we go into election day, it's important to know that we will follow the story as it develops, not before then, not after then, just as it develops, and we'll experience it together. So questions and comments, let me know. Always more on smarternews.com, and we're here for you. Next 24 hours, 40 hours, and really for the rest of this story in 2020. Thank you so much for your support, and happy election day.